All right. So, challenges of managing CoreFX repo. Let's go. What's CoreFX repo? By the way, all the talk will be basically, half of talk will be what Jonathan had, except from slightly different viewpoints. So I might skip some slides a little bit faster. And some things might be duplicated, I apologize. But I think it's actually good to see the kind of contributor viewpoint. And we have a couple of contributors. We have Franz, we have Tim, who else contributed to CoreFX? Actually, Nino as well. So it's good to hear it like from the contributor side and something from our side. So what's CoreFX repo? This is the URL. This is how you find it. It's the core framework of dotNed Core. And sometimes it's called as well BCL, base class libraries, from my last talk. And basically it's roughly 50 namespaces. And here are just some of them, like collections, I/O, laying data, networking, reflection, runtime, XML, and many more. Which things are not in CoreFX repo? ASP.NET Core. ASP.NET Core is its own repo, or actually it's a set of repos. They are not under .NET, they are under ASP.NET, the top level GitHub organization, is it called. So that's not what we consider. CoreFX repo is really about the libraries underneath those namespaces. What's not included is, for example, WCF. They have their own repo. EF, Entity Framework. They probably have their own repo as well. And there are namespaces which are not part of .NET Core at all. Like I called out UI frameworks and that stuff. XAML, basically. That's not part of CoreFX. So I'm just trying to scope what I'm going to be talking about. If you are interested about anything else, it doesn't, this talk doesn't apply to that. And things might be different. So who are the people behind the CoreFX repo? So I counted, actually this is, you can look at GitHub at some statistics. And actually you can see, who's the top contributor, the number of lines and whatever. It's actually pretty sorted. We have in the top 10, we have like 3 external contributors, which is interesting. But anyway, if you count all the Microsoft employees, you will get roughly to 30, 40 people, active engineers in there. So that's how many people are involved in CoreFX. It doesn't mean that their job is only to work on CoreFX. Actually, the ownership and expertise in runtimes or even in in the base class libraries is kind of per technology, which means that, for example, on my team, I have like networking or security, crypto namespace. We own all the technologies. So we own .NET Framework, we own the .NET Native UWP, we own the .NET Core angle as well. .NET Native and .NET Core is actually in CoreFX repo, so in the open. .NET Framework is kind of closed source, but again, the source code is very similar, oftentimes very, exact copy or in different stages of being copied. All that doesn't include things like runtime. It doesn't include JIT. Doesn't include infrastructure team. There's CLI. That's the command line. I always forget that.
Interface.
No, it's
Command line interface.
Yeah, interface. Command line interface. That's basically like you have a command line entry like .NET blah something. Go has go blah something. SDK, that's basically part of the Visual Studio, or that's project system, and there's SDK for compilation. There's NuGet, Visual Studio, like none of that again are those people. Some of those people have are contributed to both parts. It's not that we draw like, oh, this is you and this is someone else. Like there's usually overlap in many people, many things. But on CoreFX, those things are kind of outside of the CoreFX scope that I can talk about. So how do I fit in? Like why can I speak on behalf of CoreFX? So I'm engineering manager on CoreFX team. I actually work on .NET team for roughly 12 years. Up until a year ago, I was actually on the runtime team. So I owned things like metadata, type system, assembly loading, shim. Then I became manager of performance and reliability. Then actually 1 year I did UWP. I drove the release and owned pieces of UWP. And last year actually I'm on the BCL side. So I've got experience around that stuff. But again, you didn't hear anything about ASP.NET. You didn't hear anything about kind of upper stacks or farther out. So that's my view of the world. And part of my role as an engineering manager, I'm actually as well community manager on the CoreFX repo. So I have people as collaborators. I spam their inboxes. I like that. More about that later. That's why I have pretty good idea about what's happening in the repo, and especially around community and that stuff. I admit that I didn't do a single change in CoreFX repo myself. So if you ask me questions like, oh, if I run tests, it works this way, I'm gonna send you to the right people, or I will have to try it myself. It's not that I would be stupid and not being able to code. I just didn't get to it yet. Because there's plenty of stuff doing, and I'm not like 9 months, 10 months, and just there's so much stuff to do and help community and do this and do that I just didn't book the time to do a small change and get the feel myself. I'm gonna get there one day. Anyway, this is me. My goals are actually giving you guys insights as well about what's behind the scenes, because I believe that actually helps people understand. It actually helps to understand that there's no large evil corporation, or not evil, but large corporation behind that is like unified, and this is, we're humans on the other side as well. And that's an important part when you're contributing to any project. You have to understand that it's not one voice. You're not talking to some virtual entity. You're talking to multiple people. They have opinions. Sometimes they disagree, but they're trying to do usually the good thing, unless they're really bad. We don't have that luckily. So that, in my opinion, kind of improves the collaboration with contributors, makes it better. And I'm definitely interested in some feedback, alternatives, whatever ideas. Like if you guys have like, hey, over there they do this cool thing, like yep, come here, talk to me, I'm interested. Edwin, actually, Jonathan inspired us in many things, like the hackathon, for example. Like, hey, that's actually a cool thing. We plan to collaborate a little bit more, doing some of them more in Netherlands, maybe even worldwide, doing some interviews and things with teams. We're gonna get to that later. So yeah, you have ideas, something cool, let me know. You're gonna see some of the slides are really similar to Jonathan. This one, for example. Yep. Issues and PRs. So Jonathan showed you already the number 16. I did snapshot probably before or after, I don't know, 1636. You have 1644, yeah. I believe. If you look at that, this is the number of issues we are managing. It's quite a lot of bugs. I don't know if any one of you has, even closed source project with too many bugs. It's pretty huge. Unfortunately or fortunately, GitHub is really, targeted towards smaller repos, smaller projects. So we're pushing the boundaries. Not that it will be slow or anything, but it's, it's very freeform, which I like, but as well, it's challenging to actually manage it from our side, not to kind of drown in the amount, right? You can see as well over here, like how many are closed, and that's basically the last 2 years that we're working on the CoreFX repo, in the open. So overall, roughly, what is it, 9,000? That's a lot of issues. There are as well PRs, the pull requests. So right now we have only 46 open. Overall, actually, over time we had 13,000. So in the last 2 years, 13,000 changes went in as pull requests. That's a pretty good number, Jonathan talked about it, for example, on the pull requests. We're actually we're trying, and at a certain point we were there that we didn't have anything older than 2 weeks. It was like, yay! Everything older than 2 weeks was gone. We got rid of that. Like either someone lost interest, so we closed it, or everything was merged. When we actually did the dotNed Core 2.0, the preview one, we had to kind of, we wanted to lower the risk for a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, I believe. So we said like, yeah, this looks risky. Can you push that out? France knows about that. I apologize, France. But people were mostly receptive, like, yeah, okay, I understand, you're doing this thingy. But beside the kind of exceptional time of 2 to 3 weeks, we basically take everything. Before someone asked if, what kind of change, who decides what goes in. Basically, I will see later, I'll tell it later as well, that we have milestones, basically say like, in milestones, we say like, hey, there's a 95% chance we're gonna do it. Like, it's almost commitment. We can change our mind, this is the 5%, right, escape route. But we take any pull requests. You grab something from future, something that bugs you, as soon as it's high quality, it's satisfied the quality, we will do the code review, we will take it. So you want something to get in some release, like jump in, fix it. Anyway, I digress a little bit. This is the incoming monthly, roughly 500 to 600 issues. At least that's snapshots from last two months, and 700 PRs. That's a lot, you know, just numbers. And there's the notifications thingy, you know. Once you become collaborator, which we do actually, because that's the only way how GitHub allows us to assign something to someone, and we really want to avoid the duplication, working on the same thing, kind of assign things to people. We have to ask them to be collaborators, and they will get 400 to 500 notifications per day. That's a lot. I actually had the estimate of 300. So I don't get all notifications from GitHub. That's the first thing I disable. Like, oh my goodness, I would just like go insane. We have, I think, 1 or 2 people on our team who can deal with that. I don't understand how. They're superhumans. Stephen Taup and Jan Kotas, maybe more, I don't know. And when I said, like, I think I mentioned to Stephen, like, oh, it's 300 plus. Like, oh, that's way more. Like, so I bumped it up to 400 to 500. Honestly, I don't know. I would go crazy if I would monitor everything. The trouble is that, especially, for example, the PRs are typically noisy because there's lots of churn go, and basically for every line, like on every line you comment or you reply, you're gonna get no notification or email. And it's just, I would love to say, like, can you get only issue, you know, notifications and only new PRs or some kind of like, yeah, it doesn't exist, unfortunately. Anyway, how Ben Adams called it nicely, you know, just read it, basically.
Well, that's what I said, right?
Yep. On Twitter, like, I added Ben because I wanted to assign something. Well, he wanted to work on something. Like, okay, I'm gonna assign it to you, and then what the heck happened? He just dosed my, you know, mailbox. Yep, we kind of did. So these days, first thing when I ask someone like, hey, I'm gonna add you as a collaborator, I send you an invitation. Please disable notifications. The good news, actually, you can disable notifications for the entire repo, but you can there are 3 options. Either you monitor everything, which is craziness on large repos, or you monitor only things where you are mentioned or you subscribe to, which is, that's what I do. That's, I think, that every sane person does. Like, if you're interested, you subscribe, or you don't monitor anything, which is like, yeah, I don't care. But, you know, I don't think that anyone does that, or at least who cares. So we have this large repo, this large number of issues. We have to slice it and to kind of get some sanity. And especially from the way of making our developers productive, you know. Because when I actually joined, we found out that we have 1-year-old issues when someone asked a question and we didn't respond to it. I was like, that ain't good, you know. My standards are a little bit higher. So I tried to kind of come up with a way how to make sure that we don't miss things. And this is one way where we basically have the area, which is based on contract assembly, but mostly it maps to namespace, except runtime, I believe. And these area labels and more about that, actually. And actually, each area label has kind of owner or expert, whatever you call it, sometimes even more. And it's expected that the area owners kind of manually subscribe to each thing, so that they know what's happening, and it helps them basically to focus, so they can look only on part of the repo. There are some numbers. There are some large areas like IO100. I think that runtime, which is not here. Actually, system.net is pretty large. At a certain point, like 400 issues, so which is like 25% of the repo. So that's the area with largest feedback. So I put together some tooling to actually help with notifications for incoming and outgoing issues into your area. Which, if you think about it, it's basically area is query. It's like, hey, I want every issue which is either in this label, either with label system.net HTTP or system.net security or system. So there are 4 system.net areas. Interesting thing, GitHub doesn't know or cannot do OR in queries, which sucks. So in the tooling that we have, luckily it can do. Unfortunately, it's tooling to hacked up kind of over a couple of weekends and then maintained and grown. It turns out to be pretty useful, but it reached its limitations, and it needs fresh new look and investment, which we're gonna talk about a little bit later. And similar problem actually comes from community, and Jonathan mentioned that, like, how do I stay on top of issues? How do I stay on top of what's happening? So Dave, I think it was Dave, and Dave Glick. Sorry, Dave. Dave Glick actually created, I believe that it was him that he created actually some bot or whatever, that whatever new issue or PR appears, they will tweet about it. So some of our most involved, more involved community members or contributors actually watch our issues on Twitter. It doesn't feel right. But anyway, it works. So, but it as well shows that it's not only our problem that we need to stay on top of things, but how to get some notifications as well from for customers. And I guess that when they see like, oh, I'm interested in that, they subscribe to the particular issue. So what does the tooling alerts do? This is an example of an email. Right now it's actually a little bit stupid. Basically every hour I pull into our repo and do diffs between snapshots every hour. And so like, hey, this is new, and run, based on some XML, whatever, run some certain queries in memory, and like, hey, what's new, what's gone, and do some pretty color coding that someone forced me to do these colors, and send it out, and people can ignore that or not. It's actually pretty useful. Even some people inside say like, you're sending me mails every hour. But they don't know that actually I'm subscribed to half of those, which means I get it like 10 times more. But anyway, I can deal with that. I wrote it too. So again, what we're missing is some kind of like, it would be awesome if you can configure that, like, hey, send it to me once a day or twice a day, or at 8 a.m. and then 12 or something like that. That would be freaking amazing. Yes, it's just the tooling, how it's designed right now is not quite there. Anyway, there's a thing that someone showed out at Octobox.io, which is actually open source project from Andrew Nesbitt. So when I was looking for solutions, I looked at it as well. It's actually a pretty cool thing. I don't have a demo because it's hard to switch, and I won't be subscribed to myself. But it's pretty cool that you can kind of check box. Basically, these are checkboxes and like that. So you can say like, hey, I want only those requests that I have been altered or have been assigned to me, and only pull requests. And by the way, only for certain repos. Over here, you should have all the repos and how many notifications you have there. It's pretty cool. It's almost what we want, almost, because it's basically the downside of this site or of this cool thing. It's really targeted at contributors who are contributing to multiple open source repos. We have the opposite problem. We have a large thing, and I want to monitor just a small piece, especially for our developers. It's like, yeah. So we need some kind of like tweaks to that and stuff. I talked with Andrew. On top of that, actually, his tool basically just processes the notifications from GitHub. So he doesn't have his own notifications. And GitHub doesn't do notifications for new thing in query. They don't do notifications, for example, for label change or for milestone change. I'm a manager. We do releases as well. Not only manager, but I'm managing the release. If some developer or someone changes, and maybe Control-Fig, but changes like, milestone from 2.0 to something else, I want to check that that's the right decision. I don't want like someone, I don't feel today like we're fixing this in 2.0. Like, no, that's important, right? GitHub doesn't do that. So to actually do that, you really have to go deep into the GitHub database and do these notifications on your own. That's not designed to that. So when we talked with Andrew, I was like, I would really need really heavy, architectural changes to your stuff. Man, I think it's in Ruby, I believe. I don't know anything about Ruby. Would you mind if I just do something like on the side, like clone, and there's already one clone in another language? I was like, yeah, sure, go for it. Like, great. So we are working with community members, and I mean, working is a, we didn't touch it for the last 2 months, but yeah, because we've been busy with shipping 2.0, and the other guys were not, didn't have time as well. But with really couple people, we actually started working like, how would it be generated? How would we design something that's scalable and is basically like OctoKit or Octobox.io, yet it satisfies as well the fine-tuned requests and requirements for larger repos. So it's not that I want to say like, oh, whatever we Microsoft, we can do whatever ever from scratch. It's just that there's a need in community for the maintainers and as well for the contributors to kind of focus on some parts. We have actually a couple of people, like there's the Red Hat employees. They're actually interested only in Linux. We have Linux label. So I have actually in my tool, they get like special query, label Linux. Whatever is new or outgoing, they will learn about it. And if some new issue comes, they can jump and it's like, oh, this is actually important, right? We have like 2 or 3 people from community, actually Tim signed up, I didn't sign him up yet, but for networking and security because he's helping out actually with SSL port, SSL stream done right and faster. We have a GitHub issue tracking tab. Did I assign it to you? I should. Good. So you're spammed, you're dosed, good. Anyway, so this is actually, I didn't create this design, I had ideas in my head and actually one of the community members, and I apologize, I forgot names, because we didn't talk to each other for 2 months and it just goes, but I will have to get back to that. But anyway, so those guys actually put it together, and it's under my account, GitHub issues. I have been worded, I will have to change the name, that GitHub doesn't like GitHub in other products. So Andrew Nesbitt basically mentioned that, oh, I had it called GitHub notifications, and they told me like, no, you gotta change. So anyway, we're gonna have to change it. Anyway, this is what we're working on, and actually, as you see, our idea is as well to kind of be generating of notifications and be able things, we will have our UI because we need settings and things, but Octobox can plug in as well, or whatever other tool is there, that's what we plan. Anyway, if you want to help us, you can. So switching back to managing repo, we kind of established something called triage rules. And I'll work through them. They're actually on our repo, a little bit hidden because not most people are super interested in that when they want to contribute, but over here I'll tell you what we use and why. So rule number 1, each area or each issue should have exactly 1 area label. Exactly. Not 0, because that means nobody's looking at it, nobody is held accountable. Not 2, because if you have, in theory, 2 people or 2 groups supposed to be, owning something, both of them are the other guy. No. 1. There's, the assignee should be empty. It's an observation we made that, when things are, in the past, actually, more than, a year ago when I started, we actually had things assigned to people all the time, just area ownership. But then people moved to, owning different area, different teams, doing something else. We forgot to update it quite often. I was like, oh my gosh, this is madness. And on top of that, actually, contributors were like, oh, it's assigned to someone. Good, it's taken care of. Like, no, it's not. So the rule that, we created is empty assignee to kind of explain that, hey, nobody's working on that. Then we use the up for grabs. That's something that Jonathan uses as well. And I basically tell, mark as many things up for grabs as possible and to engineers. And there are 2 things that I want. I want there to be clear-ish, this is the next step, what should happen. Or some tips like, hey, watch out for compat. Oh, hey, this is gonna be security sensitive. Or, hey, we tried this 5 times and we failed, so this is gonna be pretty hard. And complexity description, seems straightforward, medium complexity, and oh my gosh, this is gonna be really lots of work. Just to give the contributors heads up what's happening. I think we did good, maybe, if I would guess, maybe 50% of issues have that. I think that we are due to do one more round through the 1600 issues to say okay, so what's not by the rules, triage rules? People will hate me. We set milestone as well, and that was said, by setting milestone, I want to say hey, if you set milestone, it's a 95% commitment of you that you're gonna deliver it in that thing. So don't put there oh, I wish it was here. Because what's gonna happen? You work, then you're last 2-3 weeks or 1 week, and it's oh, we have too many bugs. This is just nice to have, move it up. And the people who kind of were watching the issue or something, suddenly, oh my, first of all, they will not get notification that milestone changed. And second of all, suddenly it's not in the release. And some of them will tell us even if I knew that you're not gonna get time to do it, I would do it myself. Tough luck. That's why I'm basically pushing everyone set it to future. That's the default. If you don't know when you're gonna get to it, set it to future. Which actually sometimes helps as well communications with someone like Franz comes on why is it in future? It's important. And we can have a interesting discussion about, okay, it should be released in 2.1. Okay, let's start working on that. We missed this angle, at that angle, we didn't realize that the end-to-end is actually broken by missing API or something like that. So it's actually a good way, to really communicate as well with the, subtly with the contributors, with the community. And so the 1 to 4 are basically, or actually the 2, 3, 4 are basically oriented triage rules towards community, to help work with community, setting things up for grabs. The last one is the only thing that's kind of like on the verge, but almost every bug tracking thing have issue labels. So we created the same as well. And honestly, in this case, they are important only for the API. Either needs work, there's API ready for review, API approved. Because that tracks, we have to basically track whenever a change touches API, as in not like, hey, am I gonna behave differently, or I'm gonna be faster. We don't care from API review perspective. But if someone adds new API, we want to review it. We want to make sure that it's kind of consistent with the rest of the world, with the rest of the dotNed framework. That it's not headed in some direction where we had it somewhere else. If it's on the right type, right namespace and everything. So it's honestly, the issue table is really only to track the API keywords. And there are like 2 more rules. One of them is, tell everyone don't be afraid to say no or close issues. Because people are like, oh, if I close it, someone will tell me that I'm wrong. I was like, sure, just be ready for it. Be ready to accept feedback that you didn't realize it's okay, to close it. Maybe it's more important than we realized. But if you don't close it, you're not going to get that feedback automatically. People will just get frustrated over time that nothing is happening. So just, rather, if you think to close it, close it. If you don't think it's a good idea, say it. Again, that's more for kind of our core team. And by that, I'm trying to explain, why we sometimes say those things and why they can sometimes come, it's like, nope, we're not going to do that. And we basically expect that people will say no, this is important because of this and this, that. Okay, let's reopen. And the last thing is, basically, don't be afraid to be wrong. I think the only important thing in there is be ready to be flexible, right? And that's come with the closing. It's like, hey, I don't think the data API is important. And then someone comes, sorry friends, I'm using you a lot today, and says no guys, this is missing, and he has good points, and then we did the API review, we come with some shape, and friends no, this is still not good, right? It's the discussion. That's what this is about. And yeah, we will be sometimes wrong. We should be flexible. Unfortunately, downside is sometimes when you are very technical and you write things, it comes over as oh, these guys just ignoring me. They're just always pushing their way. No, that's not what we are trying to do. I will talk with such people if we have them on the team. Don't worry about it. It's about communicating clearly, providing clarity. And again, in writing, it's sometimes everyone sees there the emotions that they are expecting, so it might come over not that cool. We have to deal with that.
You also have Skype calls if it's really difficult to explain in words, that you say, well, this is easier in Skype call than...
Yes. That's actually, I'm gonna get to that as well. Oftentimes, when discussion is too deep and it's, we are talking past each other, it's just easier to grab the phone and call.
Yeah.
We don't do it that often because it's time sync.
Yeah.
But I did it actually probably with 3-4 contributors in the last half a year, and actually it helped greatly to explain usually they were frustrated, why don't you do this? Dude, let's talk. And then, it's not that bad. Oh, this is what you meant. All right. What can we do? Okay, can you wait 1 month? Oh yeah, sure. I'm not pressing. I just want to make sure that it's not lost. Great. And you come up with some conclusion or some consensus or something. Actually helps greatly. So adding new APIs as the last issue type. Right now we have around 100 new unique APIs in dotNed Core. Most of them are actually in the bucket we call convenience methods. Great example is the get, value, or default. Who wrote their own extension method for that in dotNed framework? I expected more hands. Yes. It's why do you guys don't have it? Well, because you can easily write it yourself. It's 1-2 more lines. It's why would you API? Well, because everyone writes it, right? So it's interesting that even on our team, we have different opinions. Me and Imo are more if everyone writes it, it should be there, right? So it's kind of like easy to use and like meaningful. There are other people sometimes push back, and we usually get to consensus. But you cannot push it too far. Like, you know, if it's like, oh yeah, like 0.1% of customers need that, it's like, you know, and it's one line, do we really need that? Actually, I've seen even one time to use argument that someone looked up on Stack Overflow and said like, do you see that it has like, you know, 700 upvotes, how to do something stupid like copying array or something. It's like, we need that function. Like, 700 upvotes is a lot. Okay, if 700 people looked it up and actually bothered to upvote, we're gonna add that API. And I think that the code was actually not performant. It's like, yeah, we need that API. The interesting thing on the APIs, especially, I'm talking from CoreFX and dotNed Core point of view mostly. CoreFX means, you know, it flows into Xamarin, by the way. Xamarin, we're working with Xamarin folks, with Miguel's team, and they want to reuse as much as possible. We're taking as well stuff from them, like HTTP Listener is a good example. When we built it for dotNed Core, it was like, hey, you know, we need on Linux, and it's actually the implementation was deep, you know, tied to Windows. Let's take the, you know, Mono version. And we did, then we got lots of tests and things. The same actually with system drawing as well. You know, Mono has it working on Linux and Mac, and it's actually pretty difficult to get right. On Windows it's GDI+, we take that. And the same way actually, so Mono and Xamarin basically, how I view them basically, they are reusing our source code, or you know, from the same source code, or at least will be there. Modulo some if that. Same for UWP. The only thing that is kind of a little bit not left out, but not from CoreFX, is actually the dotNed framework. That's kind of like different tree. But we flow fixes from dotNed Core, from the CoreFX repo as well over there, including new API. So all those things, you know, our goal is actually, I'm not sure if for all those 100 APIs, but chances is for all, and whatever new comes, it's gonna flow as well through the full framework. It's just a little bit more manual and like, you know, careful consideration, especially about, am I gonna break compatibility? Because as I said before, you don't want to break people, or, well, we don't want to break people because they yell at us. We don't like people yelling at us.
You don't?
Yep. So what type of APIs, coming back to dotNed Core and CoreFX, what kind of APIs do we take? That's kind of like some kind of decision tree, even though it doesn't look like, but, or, you know, questionnaire. Like, the thing is like, you know, is it, you know, if it's existing DCL type and we're just missing, you know, one more method, convenience, things like, yep, it should be there. You know, of course, unless it's extremely like, you know, do this or that if that happened. Like, we're not gonna put those methods in there. Now, another thing is, you know, for example, priority queue is a good example. If it's gonna be used by the CoreFX code base itself, then it's then it belongs as well to CoreFX. And another thing is like, can live somewhere else. For example, I'm not sure if you heard about power collections. There's actually something from Vintellect. There was some Microsoft Vintellect deal. They wrote it for us or something. I don't know the history quite well. But it's actually pretty cool, like, you know, advanced collections and things. It hasn't been touched. It was on Codeplex, which doesn't exist anymore, and it hasn't been touched as a code, you know, in the last 5 years at least, which sucks. If it's useful and people use it, it would be great if it has place somewhere. And people was like, okay, sure, move it to CoreFX. It's like, you know what? If we just grow CoreFX with every random API, it's gonna be, oh my gosh, like 1,600 issues right now. We cannot just grow forever. So we kind of thinking, you know, where to put these things, and one of the ideas is actually to create another repo, something like CoreFX extensions. Maybe have it even more community-driven, that, you know, there are namespaces which are not associated with Microsoft, which means system and Microsoft. It's like community.something. And, you know, some contributors, proven contributors, who are maybe, you know, maintainers of other repos as well. Like, yep, you guys decide if it's okay. We're gonna maybe give the API advice. Does it look, you know, similar to us, or do help with the API reviews? But otherwise, it's, you know, it's on you. You can decide. Such thing would help to kind of grow as well community, because it's pretty hard to create a repo for something like power collections and then collect enough mass of people interested and helping you, and you have to set up NuGet packaging and CI. And I don't know how to do that. It's probably easy. Like, maybe in a day I would figure it out. But, you know, especially getting the community around that, like enough people interested in that, it takes a while. Unless of course you're doing system.ban from Ben Adams, and that thing actually gets lots of people interested quite quickly. All right. Another thing actually I like is, or talk about, like many people actually like, oh, you should put this to CoreFX, this API, heaps or something, or well, that's not a good example. Anyway, some API, some new class. It's like, well, it doesn't quite fit. Why do you want it there? And when you talk with those people, you actually realize that their number one motivation is that Microsoft owns it, which means they can bet that it's not gonna get abandoned and that stuff. But of course, that doesn't scale. Imagine we would take almost everything that someone wants, without like really 10% of customer base having, wanting that. We would drown in APIs. We would just like scale, we would just have so many APIs, and now someone can say, oh, you should change this. Like, let me page in what I think about this API shape and that stuff. It just doesn't scale. So that's why, again, having something like CoreFX extension is something we are discussing. And it's not done deal, but I hope that it's going to happen. Anyway, API approval, as well as Jonathan mentioned, it's kind of slow, and it's by design, because once you ship API, it's there forever. The worst thing is, well, the implementation. If you throw argument null exception, it's hard to change it to null reference or the other way to something else, because you never know who started depending on that. Now in .NET Core, because we're side by side and you actually have to opt into the new version, it's maybe a little bit easier. But the more differences we have between the frameworks and between versions, the harder it is actually for the libraries. Because libraries don't have the option to say like, oh yeah, I'm gonna change that. Because suddenly if I change that, then I'm not gonna work on the old version. So they have to decide. The decision is basically they have to cross-compile, which sucks. It's lots of work. So that's why kind of like with APIs and compatibility, we take it very seriously even in .NET Core. Even though if we find something like, hey, this is really stupid, and like everyone hates it, like, yeah, let's fix it. So anyway, we are intentionally slow to kind of think it through. Interesting thing that we have like basically every Tuesday morning for a long time, we have meetings about API reviews. They're actually not public. It's intentional as well. We talk with C# team and Matt's Torrent. They don't do recordings, but they do notes. And he said basically, oh, on every meeting notes, I spend a couple of hours at least to kind of polishing up the notes. That's a lot of overhead. And honestly, most of the discussions are kind of boring. And the fact that it's not published and stream live, we can be open. We can say things like, this is shit. No, it's not. And we can have healthy discussion. If we were public, some people might not take it right. So that's one of the reasons we don't do that. However, in the CoreFX contributors stand-up, we actually thought it might be good to actually have one example of recorded API review, the 1 hour slot, and we're gonna be mild. Not that we would be swearing all the time, but if you're on the record and speaking on behalf of the company, you should watch yourself a little bit more. And suddenly, people are afraid to even talk and speak up because they might look dumb. I'm not afraid to be wrong, but some people are. And so, anyways, about having one instance might help as well our contributors to see what's happening behind the scenes. API approval is, by the way, two-stage or multi-stage. We have basically the area owners and experts are supposed to do the first level API. That's kind of like, hey, does it make sense? I'm not going to pick on system data anymore. Let's say regular expression or something. Someone wants something, and the area owner or networking and security crypto, like we want this. It's like, okay, this is how it should look. Sounds good. And then it goes to the next level, which is kind of the API reviewers. So I'm part of that group, even though I myself don't give myself too much vote, because most of the people in there did the API reviews for years, probably a decade, and they know like, oh, this pattern is bad. This is something, it's inconsistent with dictionary and this and that. And like, oh my goodness. There's so much knowledge, so much kind of like high-level stuff that actually takes into account like naming of the arguments, because apparently it leaks into serialization and other things. So there's so many kind of gotchas that these people learn over time that you need some kind of review body on top of that. So we have like basically first like, hey, is the area owner says like, that's the right area, I think it's good, right? And then the nitpicking people say like, nope, 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 we're gonna change this and eventually we're gonna get the right thing. Sometimes it's actually it goes back and forth like a couple of times. It happens. But it's healthy discussion. All right. So, which code changes to take? I picked up a couple of types of changes that we get. For example, performance changes. People often say like, oh, this is faster. It's like, yeah, but performance changes often are trade-offs. It's not that you make, it's hard these days to make something in just purely faster. Usually it's like, yeah, it's faster, but allocates a little bit more memory. Might not be the good trade-off, Or, hey, it's faster on read access, but worse on write access. Well, the right people are sometimes important as well, right? So, some people don't realize these things, and we have to kind of like, yeah, you did this thing. Another actual reason why even sometimes we don't take performance changes is kind of the code complexity. In Link, Link is like awesome idea. It's like, oh, I will optimize for array, okay, or for list, okay, for dictionary. Wait a sec. How many people use the Link on dictionary? Like, and you just added like 5 pages of code. Like, yeah, it's right, but is it worth the code complexity? Because the more code you have, basically the higher chance that you're gonna make a mistake or you expose something. Is it really worth it? So that's why we often say like, you know what, faster is not always better because there are other things that you have to think about. Breaking changes of compatibility, that's another thing. We have to think about like, hey, are we breaking? If we make this change, for example, I said, we in some dictionaries we were throwing null reference exception, and the right thing would be argument null reference exception. Are you gonna make the change or not? Like, yeah, it's right. Let's take it. It's like, you know what? But then it's gonna be harder for libraries to kind of be because it's gonna be inconsistent across platforms or versions. So that sucks. But let's say you convince me that well-written code will never run that. Well, actually, there are 2 options. Either people see that often, which means like if they see it often, they already are catching null reference exception. Why should I change that? Because if I change it, I'm gonna break their code. They likely didn't catch 2 exceptions. They likely catch exactly the one they saw, no matter what the MSDN says, right? Because it's driven based on implementation. Like at least majority of people. I do that. I admit. I just see what's there. It's not that every function I use, I will double check. Oh, MSDN, like, does it behave correctly? No. You find it. You write the test case. This is how it behaves. This is what I'm going to handle. So if it's used, you cannot change it. If it's not used, why would you change it if no one cares? Again, I'm not saying that you're not taking any code, breaking changes, but you see the dilemma. It's not easy, and the breaking changes actually. It's even worse when you say like, hey, by the way, it behaved this way on Mono, this way in dotNed Core 0.1 as well, and this way in dotNed Framework. All right, so should I change it or not? Which compatibility is more important? Compatibility with dotNed Framework is important for people to moving back and actually for libraries. Having the right thing is important as well. Compatibility with your own previous release is actually important because that's the people who are already on your platform bought in and you suddenly would break them. That's not fun. Anyway, pretty tough decisions. I think I kind of... actually, good thing is what we often use in those cases is as well API usage. How much is the API used? I'm going to actually have a slide about that and showcase, I believe. Obsoleting APIs. Someone called it out in last talk or 2 talks about before. Yeah, why don't you obsolete APIs? It's like, well, you know what? There are lots of people who treat warnings as errors, which is good. Yeah. Unfortunately, if you add an obsolete argument, it's gonna have, error suddenly. And there are surprisingly lots of customers who just upgrade Visual Studio. That's actually, I'm channeling C# team, a Jared person. He has lots of experiences with that. Basically, like, nope, we're not doing any obsolete. Because they learned the hard way that they basically put some obsoletes, somebody upgraded Visual Studio, hey, I upgraded my Visual Studio, my project doesn't work, go fix it. Like, well, it's just obsolete, just disable them. We have thousands of them, I don't care. All right, what do? So it's basically technical breaking change. And again, if you're flexible and things, you don't care, you switch this, like, put some argument, some suppressing of the warnings and that stuff. There are many customers actually, unfortunately, who care, and we have to kind of think about them as well. We cannot just ditch them because they don't do the right thing. So this is example of the API usage. and telemetry. This is on the APIs of dotNed, which I think I showed last time. Again, don't worry about the that certificate. And this is what you see actually inside when we log in. We see more of these things, but this is basically what is it? Dictionary. So hey, 50%, 55% of what is this? API telemetry. Okay, so this is NuGet.org. So on NuGet.org, 40% of NuGet packages use dictionary. That's pretty cool. We should not break that, I guess. And you can get that information, by the way, per method, not only per per class. And over here, API port telemetry. I believe this is telemetry actually from the API port tool I showed you. We actually collect that information as well. Somehow, if you opt in, I don't know. But at least anyway, we have some data from existing applications, definitely from inside Microsoft, maybe even from outside. And we actually use that to find out how often actually applications use. Because what we don't know, like NuGet is great, that's the libraries. We don't know about applications. Because they are often in enterprise, hidden behind the wall. We cannot, we're not gonna get to the sources. There's no telemetry because it's secret, right? We don't want to break those customers, but we don't know anything about them. So we're trying to approximate these things. Okay, so this is there's actually one more tool that we're thinking. This is about the obsoleting. So when we told about like, hey, we cannot do obsolete, but we really want to do obsolete. So what do? We came up actually, Imo, over one weekend wrote a tool, Visual Studio plugin that actually helps developers to say like, hey, you're just stepping on a landmine, don't use that. This is not either not compatible or this is gonna throw on Linux. I'm gonna walk you through that. Open source tool, and it's gonna be soon filled in with data. So this is first case, this is how it's created. Platform not supported exceptions. Because we have like, I don't know, there's maybe 100 APIs. If you look at the tool, it has all the entire list, so you can actually dig out the information from there. There's some number of APIs which actually throw on, for example, are not supported on Linux or Mac OS. Imagine, for example, registry. In registry, that would just throw. It's not in dotNed standard, so I don't. Well, if it's in dotNed Core, and you want to know that, hey, by the way, your application is using registry, you're not gonna work on Linux or Mac. Again, you can then go to settings and say like, yep, I don't care about Linux, I don't care about Mac, just tell me Windows stuff. But this is what you're gonna get. Squiggly thingy and this is why. Another thing is, hey, you're using dotNed standard 2.0 APIs missing from dotNed framework 4.6.1. So that's I talked with someone there's 100 roughly APIs, which actually I think scale down to 30. So there's 30 APIs which were introduced in 4.6.2 and dotNed Core 1, which are not on 4.6.1. We're not gonna force everyone to use dotNed standard 2.0 just because of the 30 APIs. But they are not implemented. So they basically throw missing method exception or something like that. Again, this tool will tell you like, hey, this is the one, like, yep, not gonna work on 4.6.1. And you might be okay. And you can go into settings like, yep, I don't care about that. Or you do, and like, okay, I should not use that. Again, it's 30 APIs, it's not too much. And yeah, deprecated APIs. Great, actually, ArrayList is apparently, deprecated. HTTP listener, SMTP client, and many more, which we kind of brought to dotNed Core to kind of ease up the migration of applications. They are obsoleted in the way they're gonna work, but for example, SMTP client, we're not gonna improve it. We're not gonna make it faster. You want something faster? No, it's not here, but for example, over there, it would be like, go use MailKit, or here's the list of things that are kind of like cool, up to latest standard and fast. However, the SMTP client is very useful if you need to just send a couple of emails. My tooling, the GitHub issues, it's just the easiest thing. Like you say, you type in the Stack Overflow and search like, how to send an email in .NET, this is the first thing that pops. So having in .NET Core is actually useful because you don't want every developer, first of all, in the API portability tool, poke up, oh, you don't have this, and come up with some alternatives. Or just like, become an expert on yet another area. You don't want that everywhere. It's just unnecessary. So we brought those APIs over to .NET Core to ease up migration. But the support is there, but with the we're gonna go on it so far. But some of those APIs actually we are at the point that we would not take even commits and fixes in that because it's not worth it. All right. I think we're getting close. Team culture changes and challenges. So one of the key things is actually having discussions in the open. Well, that's what I mentioned. It's easier to talk with people than to write stuff. Or if you write it down, it can be misunderstood. Someone can take it offensive, and people do. I do as well. I learn how to chill out. Think it through, think it again. Onboarding new contributors. So the documentation that Jonathan as well mentioned, the tooling that hey doesn't work in VS Code, and as well our attitude, like hey, having it being in a welcoming place and that stuff. So that's what we strive for. That's a challenge. I think we're doing pretty good on the welcoming part and like being responsive on PRs. On the documentation, I don't feel too bad, and the tooling, I think that we could improve some stuff. And we're gonna improve it. And again, contributors, come and help us. You don't like that it doesn't work on VS Code, just go jump in and fix it. Like honestly, you have probably as good information and chance to fix it as us. And hey, if you don't know how the MS Build thing works, just ask us. We answer questions. Communication is challenged, like being polite, welcoming, patient, making things actually constructive. That sometimes like people have tendencies. This is crap. Like how can you? Like, okay, what do you mean? What's the alternative? What do you propose? Just come up with constructive, like, hey guys, I think you should do the API this way and that way. If someone comes and like, no, guys, you should, deprecate and you should break these APIs because I like something else. Like, yeah, that doesn't work well with all the customers. Sometimes actually we have the, language as unclear language because those people are English as second language, as I myself. But sometimes it's really hard to understand what they mean. It might come over as offensive because if you translate it from some weird language, Czech, let's say, it just doesn't come over that well. Oftentimes, actually, we see people like missing or incomplete or complex repro steps. And if there's one thing that I need to work as a hobby to create something like, if you landed on this page, this is what you should know. If I ask you for minimal repro, please spend the time. I have seen people like, I don't have time, you do it. Like, no, that's not, okay, if you're 1 in 1,000, if there's 1,000 customers banging on our door, yes, I'm gonna create a minimal repro. But if you think that I'm gonna debug your large application, because like, oh, just debug it, like, it's hard. Guess what's the first step I do when I get a large repro? Create a minimal one. I think that in general, I spend like maybe 30–50% time of just minimizing repro to something, oh, I have finally something in like 2 free files or maybe even just one class that I can comprehend and I know what's going on, and now let's debug the, especially the runtime and stuff. People don't get that, and yeah, we have to teach them. People are sometimes frustrated. Like, how come you don't, this is so important, how come you don't do this? It's like, first of all, we make mistakes, that happens. And, sometimes we just didn't know. People assume that we know everything. We don't. We are human beings, people move, sometimes there's no, sometimes you don't have the expert in the area, like bits got lost, it's not recorded in the issue. So I kind of encourage everyone, like, look at it from the context of the issue. If you think that, how come it didn't have, like, is there enough evidence? And people say like, oh my gosh, everyone wants this. Like, how come there's only 2 votes on this issue? What do you mean by everyone? Oh, we have so many enterprise customers. Okay, tell me more, right? That's an interesting challenge. Abuse, kind of aggressiveness, luckily we don't you see that often. But that's kind of thing that when people come like, oh, you have to fix it. Like, you have to fix it now. It's like, chill out again. Why? What's the scenario? Tell us more. What's the impact? Did you think it through? Did you think through the outcome path? That's not us trying to send the people away. It's really trying to like tell me more. Like, convince me this is important. I'm totally open to that. Some people take it as like, why don't you listen to me? Well, because I don't understand what you're saying, or I don't have your background, basically. Sometimes what's hard is actually, this is especially in my case, on the issues you have to, especially when it's heated discussion, which doesn't happen too often, sometimes does, you have to kind of balance the, what's my own opinion and driving to consensus. I found out the hard way, actually it's much easier to say like, oh, I have opinion, like, you know what, shut up, just drive the consensus, because then people will take you easier. Are we? Okay. We did the CoreFX contributors stand-up. Our idea is to have bidirectional discussions. First session was kind of closed with 30 contributors we picked. It's gonna be monthly cadence. We're gonna do live streaming and recordings, and it's gonna be open to everyone. And there's more stuff coming, like some QA sessions, technology sessions. We want to do monthly alpha versions for people to consume, so they can check out what's the latest, greatest. There's a handful of people who are willing to be on the bleeding edge. They just don't want to do the daily build, just because that's a little bit too much to ask. We will have some videos and stuff. What else? That's it. Yeah, I almost made it.